Sometimes I wonder if her poor reaction to cancer treatment was a result of her unconsciously wanting to die or actively sabotaging her treatment. Anyway, I was with her in the hospital when she died. The official story is that my father went to court and won a murder case. He forced the doctor to change the time of death. In fact, he had sex with his assistant in her apartment to celebrate. He simply presented his mother as a trophy, and the press loved the story of how they met. A heroic prosecutor goes to save a beaten woman. Damn, that bastard himself beat her more than once, and I saw it. Why are you telling me all this? I was forced to ask. Because you don't deserve it, Hogan. My father, he's not a very good man. After my mother died, he hid his affairs until I left for college. Then he began to organize meetings in the house, and they're not just for his work. He also hosts meetings for some of the charity groups he is involved with. I know for sure that he sleeps with 2 other women from these groups. One of the poor women actually thinks this is true love and plans to leave her husband. Is this what Kelly is thinking of doing? I asked. I understood what I had heard, but I was still curious. Barbara shook her head. No, she thinks it's just fun. They say that power is the main aphrodisiac. Kelly seems to be proof of that. I heard her talking to my dad about some senator they were meeting with. So, what do you want? I asked. To her credit, Barbara looked me straight in the eye as she answered. I want you to get out of your marriage with this traitor. I want my father's career to be ruined to the point where he would never be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I thought about just sending my material to the newspapers or even to the other party, but he has too many friends. I believe that together we can make them pay. Won't it be more difficult for you to finish school? She tossed her auburn hair again. No, my mother left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I didn't touch it, but if it came down to it, I could pay for the rest of my tuition and MBA and still have a nice cushion left over. If your mother had so much money, why didn't she take you and leave? She could go to Ireland, where your father wouldn't reach. Barbara winced. As I said, she was raised Irish Catholic. She was taught that divorce was not an option. No matter what happened, my mother held on to her faith until the very end. This is the only thing that makes me think that her death was unconscious and not intentional, since they also consider suicide to be the unforgivable sin. I must admit, I could not see anything but the truth in Barbara. She said she wanted to ruin her father's career, and the fact that I had this information did not bode well for his ambitions. I didn't think it could be some kind of trap. If Kelly and Paul wanted to destroy me, they could do it openly in court. This mean shit was only for those who were desperate, like me. A plan began to form in my head. I need Barbara's help with a few things. If nothing else, it would show me how dedicated she was to destroying her father. Okay, I agreed. But I don't want to destroy him by publishing these pictures or even naming him in the divorce. Barbara looked at this in surprise. Why not? She demanded. Her face turned red with passion, and she took a breath to begin some speech. I stopped her with a raised hand. I didn't say we wouldn't destroy him, but I don't want to deal with the bad press of a cuckolded husband in a political scandal. Instead, I want to destroy what he has strived for all his life, destroy his power and influence, and I can have a nice, quiet divorce that no one will worry about. Barbara looked at me with shock on her face. A minute later, a sly smile appeared on her face. What do you want from me? I grinned. I'm going to do what I do best. Get me his financial documents, personal and for his campaign. They took Capone thanks to tax evasion. Having met your father, I have no doubt that I can find something. And if not... What? She asked. I smiled. I can do one more thing. For the next 3 days, Barbara and I were busy. She installed a keystroke recorder on her father's personal laptop and home computer. She also took a full backup of his computer's hard drive. We configured their security system to upload records to a cloud space known to me, which was physically located abroad. For my part, I didn't listen to Kelly's phone. Thanks to Barbara's evidence, I didn't need anything else. I activated a GPS tracker designed for parents keeping an eye on their children. Basically, it just used cell towers to determine the location unless I sent a command to activate the GPS. I just didn't want her to find me at home while I was busy with work. I faked a groin injury the day after Barbara first came to see me. This gave me an excuse not to have sex with my wife. After learning about the number of Paul's partners, I didn't want to take any more risks than I already unknowingly took. Plus, I don't think I could have done it without my anger exploding. By the way, I made an appointment with the doctor to get tested for sexually transmitted diseases. Nothing was detected at first, but some, like HIV, can take months to test positive for antibodies. Kelly went to the conference in Pittsburgh for her last date with Paul, annoyed and upset. No wonder she was very excited about the trip. My problem was that somewhere inside, I still loved her. I will never be able to trust her again, but that doesn't mean I don't still love her. But I also couldn't bear the thought of having sex with her after what I found out. It was Thursday morning and Kelly, her bag packed, was waiting for Paul and the junior lawyer from their office who was traveling with them to the conference. I wonder if the young guy knew he was their cover. "So, I'll be home Sunday afternoon," Kelly said, coming up to me after dropping her bag at the front door. I sat at the table with my back to her and sipped my coffee. She wrapped her arms around me and leaned down until her lips were next to my ear. "I hope you feel better so we can start taking care of the baby," she whispered. Her tone would raise the dead, and her scent. It took me back to more innocent days. I wanted to cry right there, but I managed to restrain myself. "I'll apply ice to help it heal," I assured her. I stroked her hand and kissed her forehead. She moaned. "I wish I didn't have to go there. It would be so much better to just stay home with you and be naked all weekend." "You can always tell Evans that something more important has come up," I said. It just came out. And by the way she looked at me, she heard something in my tone. "What's your problem with Paul?" she asked in amazement. "First you were rude at the party, and now you talk like you hate this person." I forced myself to calm down and shrugged. "Honestly, I've seen too many hot-headed jerks like Evans who think he's untouchable and the epitome of power. They are a big fish in a small pond. They sell the illusion of power and force people to buy into it. Like that mayor in South Carolina last year. A big, influential guy embezzled the city's money while sleeping with 3 married women. Now he's serving 10 years in federal prison, and they're all divorced and publicly humiliated. I get the same feeling from Evans. If he gets to Washington within a week, he'll be seducing clueless interns. But eventually, the wheels of his car will fall off. And when that happens, I wouldn't want a hotel somewhere nearby." Kelly looked at me in shock. She'd heard me rant about those bastards before, but I'd never associated Evans with them before. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but it felt good to let it out. And although the marriage was over, I also felt it was only fair to warn Kelly. I still loved her, even if I would never trust her again. "Hogan, that's terrible what you said about Paul," Kelly protested. "He is a good person who has done a lot for the people of this district." "He's not like that." I heard an almost pleading tone in her denial. At a time that could not have been predicted, we heard the sound of a car horn outside the house. "Paul has arrived." Kelly let out a frustrated sigh. She gave me a look that quickly turned into a mixture of regret and fear. "I'll be home in 4 days," Kelly said, conciliatory. "We can talk about it then. But get ready, love. We have a child to start with." Then she wrapped her arms around me and kissed me passionately. I responded with an equally passionate kiss. "Have a nice week," she breathed. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. She grabbed her bag and opened the front door. "Bye, dear," she called over her shoulder. "Goodbye, Kelly," I said. Then I closed the door. 30 minutes later, I left by train for the city. Barbara and I had an appointment with the FBI. It turned out that I did not need to prepare any evidence. I would rate Paul Evans's embezzlement skills as moderately smart. Barbara and I met at her off-campus apartment to review the documents she had pulled from his computer. Overall, pretty standard methods. I estimate he had about $2 million stashed away in an offshore account. At least that's what he transferred to it, but I couldn't be sure it was still there because those records weren't included. Much of this money came from various small donors who wouldn't raise suspicion from the IRS, but why were people from out of state donating to the DA's campaign? I was able to trace some of them to defendants whose cases were dismissed or entered into plea agreements with unusually lenient sentences. It was Barbara who found the biggest bomb. It turned out that she was not the only child. Along the way, Evans knocked up 2 more women. One of them was born 3 years before the death of his wife. His mother was one of his employees at the time. The 3rd child, born 8 months after his wife's death, was born to an 18-year-old volunteer at the hospital where his wife was being treated. Evans gave each woman $2,000 a month in campaign contributions as poll research consultants. Barbara almost destroyed her own apartment in anger. That red hair really is a warning. By the time Kelly and Paul left, we had already checked everything in Paul's notes. Questions remained, but we did not have enough resources to get to the information. So I wrote down all my findings and set up a meeting with the senior FBI agent I worked with in the Philadelphia office. Barbara came to tell him the story we had made up. Barbara said that after taking a forensic accounting course, she wanted to look at real documents. She decided to look at her father's notes out of innocent curiosity. When she noticed some strange things, she called me because my wife worked for her father and knew about my experience. Gary was a seasoned professional. He knew there was more to it, but we dropped a gift-wrapped gift in his lap, so he didn't press the issue. Dirty prosecutor in his own backyard? A dirty prosecutor who just launched a campaign for the U.S. Senate. This career-making thing feels like manna from heaven. We caught a taxi to Barbara's apartment since she had a late class, and I walked to the 30th Street station to catch the train home. I thought about packing my things and leaving when Kelly got home. Gary promised to expedite the case to at least subpoena Evans' documents by Wednesday. It is unlikely that much time will pass before word of the investigation becomes known. The bastard will find out how illusory his power is when all the rats leave his ship. Kelly called me while I was on the train home. She said she called early because they were going to have some big dinner and it would be very late before she got back to her room. I had no doubt that tonight she didn't plan to stay in her room at all. I made some vague remarks, saying that everything was fine. She caught my distracted tone and asked what was the matter. I just had a meeting with some FBI agents about something, I replied. I'm in the carriage, and besides, the investigation is still ongoing, so I can't talk about it. All this was completely true. It looks like it really got to you, Kelly said worriedly. Yes, this case will be terrible. It might become national news when the full story leaks. Is it true? Kelly asked, looking a little intrigued. Can you give me a little hint? I couldn't resist. Corrupt politicians, bribes, money laundering, sex, adultery, children. Any of my friends? He darkened her. I've already said too much. If I say anything else, the Bureau will shut me down. Oh, you're no fun, Kelly pouted. Don't worry, love, your secret is safe with me. We said goodbye, and she switched off. When I entered the house, it all just amazed me. My marriage was over. We dated and were married. We were together for 10 years. I never expected to be single again. But now that's exactly what I was about to do. In the end, I just sat on the couch and waited for the sun to set. I just sat and watched. I felt like I was watching my life sink into the horizon. I was just watching. It was many hours after sunset before I moved again. It was midday on Saturday when I came out of my self-pitying fit. I won't say I didn't deserve some slack, but I knew I needed to shake things up. Ironically, I was mowing the lawn again when I saw a BMW convertible pull into my driveway. I stopped the mower and watched Barbara get out of the car. The first thing I saw was her long, pale legs sticking out from the driver's side. She was again wearing sandals with thin cords that wrapped around her calves. They always made me think of the ancient Greeks. As she stepped out, I saw her sculpted legs flex, indicating strength beneath her firm flesh. In keeping with the Greek trend, she wore a pure white toga-like dress that ended mid-thigh, but with 5 centimeters of lace at the bottom, allowing her upper thighs to be seen. The dress was made of a light, silky material that hugged her curves and tended to be semi-sheer. Her perky breasts were supported by a bikini top that was visible through the dress. Her arms were free of everything except the light freckles that dotted her skin on her upper arms and shoulders. The dress only went down one shoulder, leaving the other bare. Long red hair fell in waves onto the same shoulders. However, it was her gray-green eyes and smile that caught my attention as she approached me. I turned off the engine and greeted her. "Well, you look better than I expected," Barbara said. "I half expected to have to take you out of the bottle or off the ledge." I snorted. Last night I had a lot of thoughts about both options. "We had to do this," I said. "Besides, it distracts me." "Have you met with a lawyer?" she asked. I shrugged. "I did it on Tuesday before they left. The documents will be ready on Monday. I agreed to audit a client in Austin and leave on Tuesday. Usually I spend 3 days on such business trips and then work remotely until I complete the report. In this case, I will be there for all 3 weeks." I shrugged again. This is probably a coward's way out, but I don't want to be here when all this mess starts brewing. I saw agreement on Barbara's face. She knew that this would draw attention to her as the daughter of this bastard. "Well, I'm glad you're thinking ahead," the redhead said. "But I realize that this is what you are good at." That smile again. "Now I can plan too." "Okay, here's my plan," Barbara announced. "I'll help you finish your work here, and then you'll come to me. We'll have fun, and you'll even be able to look at me crazy. I have a swimsuit that you will absolutely love." I tried to perk up. "Barbara, I'm still married," I protested, "and I don't think I'll be ready for anything for a while." "You need to let off some steam before you explode," the sexy redhead insisted. "Besides, you know the old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the goose." Her gaze was playful, sly, and artless at the same time. I couldn't help but laugh. In one of those bizarre coincidences that proves that truth is stranger than fiction, we ran into Olivia. After finishing my yard work, I cleaned up and we went for a late lunch at a nice restaurant. I wasn't in the mood for revenge sex, but it was nice to get out of the house, and going somewhere with such a sweet girl like Barbara was not at all difficult. As I approached the restaurant, I noticed that a car was parked outside. It was Oliva's car. I almost told Barbara to turn around and we could find another place, but I didn't. Instead, I did something that was completely out of character for me. It was all on a whim. After all my careful planning, something just snapped inside me when I saw Olivia's car parked in that lot. I casually hugged the red-haired beauty and led her into the restaurant without further ado. There I gave the owner a tip so that he could seat us at a certain table. It was somewhat obscured, but was visible when returning from the toilet. I sat Barbara down facing outwards and sat down next to her. She smiled when I took her hand. "Why did it happen?" She smiled sweetly. "Not that I'm complaining," I laughed. "Do you remember I told you about how I found out about my wife's betrayal? About her friend Olivia? So her car is parked right on the street." Barbara burst into throaty laughter. "So I can be the other woman? Oh, I can live with that." She leaned forward and kissed me incredibly softly on the lips. It was not a deep, passionate kiss, but rather a kiss that hinted and promised much more. A lover's kiss. Our dishes arrived, and I frankly enjoyed myself. The tricks were forgotten as I enjoyed Barbara's company. Her witty sense of humor was killing me. I've never heard a counting sound so dirty before. I happened to look back and noticed Olivia walking past us. I pointed it out to Barbara. "Oh my God," she giggled. I was so looking forward to this. With that, she leaned forward to kiss me. I felt my hand reach under the table and rest on her leg. The skin of her thighs was so incredibly soft, and underneath were firm, elastic muscles. The touch was electric. I was so lost in the sensation that I was surprised when I heard Olivia screaming at me. "Hogan, what the hell are you doing?" she shouted at me. "Who is this tramp? Running away from your wife while she's out of town? I thought better of you." I have no doubt that the entire restaurant heard her. I let go of Barbara and turned to look at my ex-girlfriend. "What's your problem, Liv? It's just a little carefree sex before Kelly and I settle down and have a baby. And could you keep it down? People are trying to eat." Olivia stared at me as if I had hit her with a dead fish. "What?" she began. "Oh, come on, Liv. Kelly does the same. I'm sure she's having fun with her boss right now, and for several months now. So I decided it was only fair that I seduce the boss's daughter." I think Olivia almost had a heart attack. Feeling Barbara start to giggle, I gave her a gentle squeeze to keep her quiet. "You know about..." Olivia stuttered. "I know that I must be a faithful, ignorant husband while my wife runs around being so ably helped by a woman whom I considered my close friend." Olivia winced at the contempt in my voice. "I know Kelly wanted to try something else one last time before having a baby. Like that last fling before the wedding, if it was normal for her, what do you have against me? I had no information about Kelly having affairs before Paul, but as they say, once changed, always changed." I shot my suspicion into the darkness and wondered if Liv was off balance enough to confirm it. She confirmed. "Do you know about this too?" She sighed. "No, but thanks for the confirmation," I replied. Olivia turned pale at this. "Go away, Olivia," I said. She turned and ran away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a noise. It was Olivia leaving the restaurant. "Well, it was fun while it lasted," Barbara said with a slight laugh. "I really wanted her to stay here longer." Her smile made me blush. "You know she's probably on the phone with your wife right now," she added. "Perhaps," I agreed. "I give her 5 minutes before my phone goes off. However, if she left right now, it would be a 5-hour drive home from Pittsburgh. This will give us time for dessert and give me enough time to drive home and pack my things. It's a pity that I won't see you in a bikini like you promised." Barbara laughed again. "Oh, I guess we can do this another time." She reached out to grab my shirt and pull me closer. "You know, my semester ends in a week and a half," she muttered in my ear. I always wanted to see Austin. I barely caught her words as her tongue slipped into my ear. Kelly started calling me 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant. I listened to a few of her messages, and she was furious that I cheated on her. This almost made me laugh. After an hour of her messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she would eventually just call from another phone, but she was driving back from Pittsburgh, so she couldn't just ask to borrow someone's phone on the highway. When I got home, I packed all my personal belongings, not just my stuff, for the trip to Austin. I had time. 4 hours after meeting Olivia, I was leaving my home for what might be the last time. After booking a hotel room near the Philadelphia airport, I put most of my belongings in storage until I found a place to stay. I talked to Barbara on the phone several times. She was walking with a friend because her father was now leaving furious messages on her phone. I moved my flight to Austin a day and left on Monday morning. Kelly managed to call my phone several times from other numbers. Now it was a tearful rant about how I could do this to her, why I ruined her career, etc., and so on. Obviously, Olivia's initial screams attracted the attention of many people. Then, someone posted a pretty accurate comment on their blog and called Barbara and I gamers. My comment about Kelly having fun with Paul was also posted along with the fact that they were together in Pittsburgh over the weekend. This caused quite a stir in the county's political circles and at the courthouse. For the rest of the week, I avoided most news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I received a letter telling me what was going on in Doylestown. Surprisingly, it was a letter from Margaret, a senior manager in the DA's office. The elderly lawyer apologized for everything that happened. She knew that Paul had been seeing 2 women outside the office, but she knew nothing about Kelly's involvement. She also praised me for taking revenge by using the law against the lawyer. "It was an eventful week in DA Buck's office," Margaret said. "Paul was in the office Monday morning trying to deal with the fallout and denying any inappropriate behavior on his part. This is just my daughter's rebellion under the influence of her cheating husband," was the story he was trying to sell. Then on Tuesday, Kelly was served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery. The envelope contained photographs, DVDs, and a letter from me. Kelly's scream of horror when she read my letter caused Margaret and two other people to run into her office. Kelly fell into a chair in shock, and Margaret noticed the photographs that had fallen out onto the table. In my letter to Kelly, I told her that I was not having an affair, but hoped that she now had an idea of how I felt about her and this jerk. I told her I couldn't be married to someone I couldn't trust, especially now that I knew she'd been unfaithful before. There was little activity at the DA's office Tuesday. The next day, Margaret was in Paul's office for a meeting when four men in suits suddenly walked in. Paul yelled at them for interrupting an important meeting when one of the men told Paul that he was under arrest. She said he was in complete shock when he was handcuffed and taken out of the office. They led him right out the front door of the courthouse and past reporters who had somehow been alerted. I owe Gary a few beers for this. At the end of her letter, Margaret apologized for allowing them to behave this way in her office. She also asked me to let her know if I needed anything because I didn't deserve this kind of behavior. I'm sure part of her letter was about damage control, but mostly I think Margaret was the moral and professional person I always took her to be. Now all my plans for a quiet divorce have gone to hell because of my own stupid, impulsive prank with Olivia in that restaurant. Philadelphia news stations quickly learned of Paul's arrest and charges against him. As I told Kelly, this story had all the makings of a summer romance. Sex, betrayal, revenge, and too much anger. The news media loved it, and it was quickly picked up by hungry 24 news outlets. I avoided the worst because I was out of town, and they were unable to track me down because I had booked a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one on my work itinerary. However, I checked in there, and reporters were stationed around it, trying to catch me. I saw on TV that they were camped in front of my house. Kelly didn't come out, and they only filmed my relatives coming in and out. Barbara had it the worst of all. She was the daughter who betrayed her own father. She still had to go to classes and take exams, so for the first few days, it was quite easy for the media to find her. The school then forced the reporters to leave campus because they were disturbing students. It also helped that two women who had children with Paul came forward to get their 15 minutes of fame. With her final finale complete, Barbara slipped out of campus and headed to the airport. The media were disappointed, but not too surprised, when she didn't show up for the graduation ceremony. After a while, this story became a side news story and stayed there. It boiled over when Paul's trial began, but he pleaded guilty to several charges, resulting in him becoming a 20-year-old guest of the federal government. Fortunately, his guilty plea meant that Barbara and I were not called to testify. Then, the case completely disappeared from their radar, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Oddly enough, after all this publicity, my divorce went quickly and with minimal fuss. Kelly signed the papers 4 days after receiving them. I received a letter apologizing for what she did to me and to us. Furious, returning from Pittsburgh, she swore that she would never forgive me for betraying me. Finding out that she was, in fact, the only one cheating, made her realize how hypocritical she had been. She accepted my offer of a 50-50 split and simply asked that at some point, when things weren't so rough, I would agree to meet with her so she could apologize in person. At the end, she said that she would always love me and wished me well. I later learned from her mother that she had quit her job and moved to the Midwest to live with her aunt. Finding Paul did wonders for my career. In the press, the FBI gave me full credit for analyzing Paul's tapes. Since I was hiding from the same press, I was even more thorough in my work in Austin, and found not only the embezzler they were looking for, but also a second one, about whom, at that time, they had no information. My firm promoted me and put me in charge of the white-collar crime team. And yes, some joker labeled the team Hogan's Heroes. But the best part was when they assigned me an assistant, recent college graduate wishing to gain experience in forensic accounting. I've never enjoyed working late so much, and this bikini looked even better on the floor of my hotel room. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.